Aminat had always been the heartbeat of her family. Growing up in Lagos, Nigeria, she learned early that life wasn't always fair, and that sometimes love meant carrying more than your own weight. From the moment she got her first paycheck, she didn't think about herself. She thought about her parents who had given everything to raise her and her siblings, even when money was tight. She thought about her younger cousins, who often came to her with problems that seemed too heavy for their small shoulders. She thought about her brothers and sisters, who sometimes stumbled through life without guidance or support. And slowly, piece by piece, Aminat became the one keeping everyone afloat. She gave up career opportunities that could have taken her abroad, or made her wealthy because she knew her family needed her more. She poured her savings into school fees, medical bills, and everyday necessities, all while working long hours at a small finance firm. Friends would ask why she didn't spend her money on herself, on trips or nice clothes, but Aminat would just smile and say she was happy to see her family stable. It wasn't always easy. She faced exhaustion, stress, and the constant pressure of responsibility. Yet she never complained. To Aminat, this was love in action. Sacrificing her dreams to hold the people she loved together, like glue keeping a fragile house from falling apart. Everyone around her knew they could count on her, but Aminat's heart carried more than just loyalty. It carried a quiet, steadfast determination to protect her family no matter the cost. Aminat had always known money was tight in her family, but she never expected the nightmare that awaited her one sweltering afternoon in Lagos. She had just returned from work when a knock at the door made her heart sink. Two men in crisp suits were standing there, holding papers that made her stomach twist. Loan officers. They were there to collect on loans her parents had taken out years ago, and the house was on the line. Aminat felt her chest tighten as she read the notice. If the payments weren't made immediately, the family home would be seized. Every memory she had of growing up in that house, the laughter, the holidays, the quiet nights, felt suddenly fragile, like it could be erased in an instant. Her parents were in shock, frozen as the men explained the situation. They spoke in formal, cold language that made everything feel even more real. Aminat's father muttered, "This can't be happening. We'll figure something out," while her mother tried to hide her tears behind a stiff smile. But Aminat could see through the denial. The truth was clear. The bills had piled up, some loans had gone unpaid for months, and their home, the place that had sheltered them through every storm, was about to be taken away. Aminat felt a surge of panic, quickly followed by the familiar determination that had defined her life. She had faced challenges before, but nothing like this. She imagined the family scattered, friends whispering about how they lost their home, and her younger cousins with nowhere safe to sleep. The thought was unbearable. She knelt beside her parents and siblings, trying to calm them, explaining the seriousness of the situation. But even as she spoke, she knew that understanding alone wouldn't save them. Action was needed, and it had to be fast. Everywhere she looked, Aminat saw reminders of what was at stake. The worn sofa where her siblings used to fight over the last piece of cake. The backyard where they had celebrated birthdays and graduations. The kitchen where her mother had cooked endless meals from barely enough ingredients. Losing this home would mean losing more than just a roof over their heads. It would erase years of love and sacrifice. As the sun set over Lagos, casting a golden glow over the city, Aminat made a silent promise. She would do whatever it took to save her family's home, no matter the cost. The loan officers had left, their warnings hanging heavy in the air, but Aminat was already planning, already calculating. She knew the road ahead would be painful, exhausting, and full of obstacles, but she also knew that she could not let her family down. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to feel the weight of responsibility fully, and for the first time she resolved to carry it without faltering. The fight for her family's home had just begun, and Aminat was ready. Aminat knew time was not on her side. The loan officer's warnings echoed in her mind as she sat at the small kitchen table, papers spread out before her. Every number, every missed payment, every interest charge told the same story. If she didn't act fast, her family would lose the home. She took a deep breath, feeling the familiar knot of anxiety in her chest, and told herself there was only one option. She had to do whatever it took. Her first step was her own savings. Aminat had spent years building a small nest egg, money she had set aside for emergencies or dreams she never got to chase. Without hesitation, She began withdrawing funds, transferring every possible naira toward the outstanding loans. Friends noticed her sudden requests for help, and though she hated to burden them, she swallowed her pride and asked. Some lent generously, some hesitated, but all trusted her determination. Each contribution, no matter the size, brought her a little closer to keeping the house intact. Next came the banks. Aminat spent long hours on the phone, emailing, and even walking into branches, negotiating with managers who seemed unmoved by her urgency. She explained her family's situation with honesty, showing them records of what she could pay and promising more as soon as possible. There were moments when it felt hopeless, when officers spoke in cold, mechanical tones, or when another loan seemed out of reach, but Aminat refused to give in. She remembered the laughter in the halls of her childhood home, the late-night talks in the living room, and the dreams her parents had sacrificed for. Giving up was not an option. Days turned into nights and slowly her plan took shape. Payments were made, arrangements finalized, and the looming threat of repossession began to fade. Aminat could finally breathe, though exhaustion weighed heavily on her. When she returned home, she found her family gathered in the living room, unaware of the sleepless nights and tireless effort that had gone into saving their home. She sat them down and explained everything. The payments she had made, the debts she had covered, the agreements she had negotiated. Relief washed over their faces, mingled with gratitude and pride. For the first time in weeks, the house felt safe again. Aminat looked around at the walls that had seen so much of their family's history and felt a quiet, fierce satisfaction. She had done it. Against all odds, with little more than determination, sacrifice, and the support of a few trusted friends, she had saved her family home. And though she knew the challenges were far from over, she could finally tell herself that for now, her family was secure, and she had carried them through yet another storm. The day Aminat finally told her family the house was safe felt like a weight lifting off her shoulders. For weeks she had worked tirelessly, juggling her own job, borrowed money, and endless phone calls to banks and friends. Now, as she watched her parents' faces light up, the tension that had haunted the house for months seemed to melt away. Her mother clutched her hand, tears streaming down her face, and whispered, "You've saved us, Aminat. You really have." Her father nodded, voice thick with emotion, patting her shoulder like she was more than just his daughter. She was the glue holding the family together. Her siblings gathered around, shouting and laughing, their relief spilling over into jokes and playful teasing. Even her younger cousins, normally full of boundless energy, seemed to sense the gravity of the moment. They crowded around her, asking questions about how she managed to do it all, hanging on her every word. Aminat smiled, letting herself enjoy the recognition, though a small part of her wanted to quietly step back. She wasn't used to being the center of attention. For so long she had worked in silence, giving everything without expecting anything in return. But now, seeing the joy and gratitude in their eyes, she felt seen in a way that warmed her from the inside out. To celebrate, the family cooked a big meal together. The aroma of jollof rice, fried plantains, and spicy stews filled the small house, and for the first time in weeks, the kitchen echoed with laughter instead of worry. Neighbors dropped by to congratulate Aminat, marveling at her dedication and courage. She felt proud, but more than that, she felt valued. All the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the borrowed money, the stress she had carried alone, finally seemed to matter. That evening, after the last guest had left and the house had quieted down, Aminat sat in the living room, looking around at the space she had fought to protect. Her heart felt full. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, her family truly appreciated her. Maybe they finally understood the depth of her love, and the strength it took to hold them all together. She realized that, even though the challenges hadn't disappeared completely, this moment of peace, of recognition, was worth everything. For now, Aminat let herself breathe, laugh, and enjoy the warmth of her family's gratitude. The house was safe, her family was happy, and she was finally being celebrated for all she had done. It was temporary, she knew, but in that moment it felt like the world had stopped, just long enough for her to feel proud, loved, and deeply fully appreciated. Aminat had been looking forward to coming home after a long week at work. The relief of her family finally being secure still lingered in her mind, and she imagined walking through the familiar front door, hearing laughter, and maybe even sitting down for a quiet evening with her parents. But the moment she reached the gate, her heart froze. Strange cars were parked along the street, and a group of people she didn't know was standing near the front door, talking in low, serious voices. She rushed up the steps, her mind racing. As she reached the porch, she noticed bright red eviction notices plastered across the door and windows. Her stomach sank, a cold, heavy weight pressing against her chest. Before she could even knock, one of the men turned toward her, holding a folder. "Are you Aminat?" he asked. She nodded, confused and afraid. "This property has been sold. The new owners are moving in today." Aminat felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her. "Sold?" she whispered, barely able to form the word. She turned toward the house, looking for her parents, and found them standing behind her, avoiding her gaze. Her father's face was pale, his eyes darting anywhere but hers. Her mother's hands trembled as she tried to explain. We thought it was for the best," her father said finally. "Better opportunities elsewhere. We didn't want to burden you with decisions." Aminat couldn't believe it. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every penny she had borrowed or paid from her own savings, all of it seemed meaningless. Her heart ached not just from the loss of the house, but from the betrayal of the people she had loved and protected above everything else. "You sold it? Without telling me?" she said, her voice shaking though she tried to keep calm. All of this was for nothing? Her parents tried to justify their decision, speaking about future plans and new beginnings, but Aminat could hear only the betrayal in their words. The house she had saved, the home filled with years of memories and struggles, was gone, replaced by strangers ready to take over. Anger, hurt, and disbelief washed over her in waves. She realized that the trust she had placed in her family, the unconditional love she had given, had been broken in the most painful way possible. As the buyers moved closer to the door, Aminat stood frozen, clutching her bag like it was the only thing she still owned. The world she had fought so hard to protect had been stripped from her overnight. And in that moment the realization hit her fully. The people she had sacrificed everything for had turned their backs on her, leaving her to face the consequences alone. The betrayal was complete, and Aminat knew that life would never feel the same again. Aminat stood on the sidewalk, her single suitcase by her side, staring at the house that had once been the center of her world. It was gone, sold, locked, and filled with strangers. Her heart felt hollow, as if the life she had poured into protecting her family had been erased overnight. The sun beat down on her, but she hardly noticed. Around her, neighbors walked past, casting curious or pitying glances. Some whispered, some shook their heads, and all of it felt like a spotlight on her humiliation. Aminat had always been the one people relied on, the one who held her family together, and now she was nothing more than a woman left on the street. She clutched her suitcase tightly, feeling the weight of all the sacrifices she had made. Every sleepless night, every naira she had borrowed or spent to keep her family afloat, every moment of stress and worry. Had it all been for nothing? Anger mixed with heartbreak, swirling in her chest so tightly she could hardly breathe. The very people she had given her life to protect had turned their backs on her. Her parents, her siblings, the cousins she had looked after like her own children. They had betrayed her in the cruelest way possible. As she walked through the streets of her neighborhood, Aminat felt eyes on her. People she had known all her life suddenly seeing her differently. She had always been strong, dependable, even admired, but now she felt exposed and small. She passed familiar shops and streets, the smells and sounds of Lagos bringing back memories of laughter and family gatherings. Each memory stung, a sharp reminder of what she had lost. That night, Aminat found a quiet corner to rest, the suitcase her only possession, and she let herself cry. She cried for the home she had saved, for the trust that had been shattered, and for the love she had given that had been repaid with betrayal. There was no one to comfort her, no shoulder to lean on, only the harsh reality of the street and the bitter truth of her family's actions. Yet, amid the heartbreak, a small spark of determination flickered. Aminat knew that she could not change what had happened, could not force her family to undo their choices. But she could decide what came next. The humiliation, the betrayal, the heartbreak, they were hers to bear, yes, but they would not define her forever. That night, sitting under the dim light of a street lamp, Aminat made a silent vow. She would rise again, stronger than before. She would reclaim her life on her own terms, and no one, not even those she had loved the most, would ever leave her powerless like this again. Aminat arrived in Abuja with nothing but her suitcase and a heart heavy with betrayal. The city was unfamiliar, loud and crowded, and for the first time in her life, she felt truly alone. The money she had saved for emergencies was gone, drained years ago to protect her family, and now she had no steady income, no home, and no one she could fully trust. Every street she walked reminded her of how drastically her life had changed. Finding a place to stay was the first challenge. Cheap lodges were full, and the few rooms she could afford were tiny and uncomfortable. Sometimes she had to sleep in waiting areas or under dim streetlights, just to have a roof over her head for the night. Hunger became a constant companion, and she learned to survive on whatever food she could afford from street vendors. She took odd jobs whenever she could find them, cleaning offices, delivering packages, even assisting in markets, all for small pay, just enough to keep moving forward. Each day was exhausting, yet Aminat refused to give up. Despite the hardship, she found moments of unexpected kindness. A shopkeeper offered her food when he saw her skipping meals. A stranger gave her directions to a more affordable lodging, refusing payment. These small gestures reminded her that even when life felt cruel and unfair, there were people who could restore a glimmer of hope. Aminat clung to these moments, letting them fuel her determination to keep going. But there were long nights when she couldn't sleep, lying on thin mats and thinking about her family. How could the people she had sacrificed everything for betray her so completely? She replayed the events over and over in her mind, analyzing every word, every decision, wondering if she could have seen it coming or done something differently. The unfairness of life pressed down on her, heavy and suffocating, but she refused to let it crush her spirit entirely. Instead, she let it teach her lessons about trust, betrayal, and the strength of self-reliance. Aminat realized that life wasn't about how others treated her. It was about what she did with her own strength. Each struggle, each humiliation, each small victory became a reminder that she could survive, even when everything seemed stacked against her. Sitting alone on a bench one evening, watching the city lights flicker across the streets, Aminat made a promise to herself. She would rise from this rock bottom. She would not let betrayal define her, nor would she let her past sacrifices be wasted. She would build something for herself, something that could never be taken away again. Though she was broken, hungry, and exhausted, Aminat felt a quiet fire start to burn inside her. The road ahead was uncertain, but she knew she was ready to fight, to learn, and to reclaim control of her life. The first step, she realized, was survival, and she was determined to take it no matter what it cost. Aminat refused to stay broken. Every night in Abuja, sleeping in cramped, uncomfortable spaces, she replayed the betrayal she had suffered, and a determination began to grow inside her. She would not let her family's actions define her life. She refused to be a victim. Instead, she decided to turn her pain into purpose, to build something that could never be taken away again. Her mind turned to her skills, years of experience in finance, careful money management, and understanding real estate. She had learned how to negotiate with banks, how to track payments, and how to spot opportunities where others saw risk. These were the very skills that had saved her family home once, and now she realized they could save her future. Aminat started small, looking for ways to invest whatever little money she could scrape together. She studied the property market in Abuja, noting trends, potential rentals, and undervalued properties she could acquire. She spent hours reading, researching, and talking to experts she met along the way, slowly building a plan. It wasn't easy. She faced skepticism from strangers who doubted her, hurdles in getting funding, and the constant pressure of living day to day in a city where every naira mattered. But Aminat had learned resilience through hardship, and she relied on every lesson life had taught her. She approached her first investment carefully, negotiating a small property with potential, and gradually built a portfolio. Each success, no matter how small, was a victory, a step toward reclaiming control of her life. Within months, Aminat realized she could do more than just invest for herself. She could help others avoid the pitfalls she had fallen into. She opened a small property management firm, focusing on helping families secure and manage homes responsibly. Her services combined her financial expertise with her personal understanding of the heartbreak that came from losing a home unexpectedly. She worked tirelessly, often putting in long days and nights, But she found joy in helping others protect what mattered most to them. The plan for revenge she had once imagined, the desire to prove herself to those who had betrayed her, transformed into something deeper: redemption. Aminat wasn't just rebuilding her life. She was creating stability, security, and opportunity, both for herself and for others who might otherwise be vulnerable. Every property she acquired, every client she helped was a statement. She would never be powerless again. By the end of the year, Aminat had a small but thriving property management firm. She had turned betrayal into motivation, despair into action. Her future, once uncertain and frightening, now felt full of possibility. The lessons of trust, betrayal, and perseverance had shaped her into someone not just stronger, but wiser. Aminat had taken the first steps toward rising above her past, and she knew that this time, she would never let anyone take her home, her dignity, or her independence away again. A year after hitting rock bottom in Abuja, Aminat's life had completely changed. The small property management firm she had started was thriving, and she now owned multiple properties across the city. Each building she acquired wasn't just an investment. It was a symbol of her hard work, determination, and refusal to let betrayal define her. She had gone from sleeping on street corners with a single suitcase to walking through her own offices, making decisions that affected dozens of families. The transformation felt surreal, yet it was a testament to the fire she had carried inside her all along. Aminat's reputation grew quickly. People admired her not just for her success, but for the honesty and integrity she brought to her business. Clients knew she genuinely cared about helping families secure safe and stable homes. Her past struggles gave her a unique perspective. She understood the fear of losing everything and the heartbreak of betrayal. That understanding guided every decision she made. She negotiated fair rents, offered flexible payment plans, and educated her clients on how to manage their finances to avoid falling into debt traps. Slowly, word spread, and families who had once feared eviction or financial ruin found hope in Aminat's support. Her mornings were spent reviewing properties, meeting with tenants, and planning new investments. Afternoons often involved teaching workshops on financial literacy, helping young people and struggling families learn to protect their homes and their futures. Aminat found satisfaction in these moments, realizing that her success was not just about wealth, it was about creating security for others. She wanted no one to feel the pain she had felt, the humiliation of losing a home to circumstances beyond their control. Evenings were quieter, but no less fulfilling. Aminat reflected on the journey that had brought her here, from Lagos, where she had given everything for a family that betrayed her, to Abuja, where she was now building her own empire. Each setback she had endured, every sleepless night and moment of despair, had prepared her for this life. The anger she had once felt toward her parents had transformed into resolve. She no longer needed their approval or recognition. She had built something for herself that no one could take away. By the end of the year, Aminat's story had become an inspiration. Friends and strangers alike admired her resilience and determination. She had risen above heartbreak, betrayal, and hardship, creating a life that combined success with compassion. Her properties were not just investments, they were lifelines for families, a testament to the power of perseverance and integrity. Aminat had proven that even in the face of betrayal and loss, it was possible to rise, to rebuild, and to help others rise along with you. She had found not only financial independence but a deeper purpose, one that turned her pain into a force for good, ensuring that no family would face what she once endured alone. Aminat had built a life she could be proud of, multiple properties, a thriving business, and the respect of her community. She had risen from betrayal and hardship, creating stability and security on her own terms. But one afternoon she received a call that made her pause. Her parents were struggling. They had lost jobs, their savings were gone, and now they needed help. When they arrived at her office in Abuja, Aminat saw the same faces she had once loved and trusted. Her parents looked weary, their pride replaced with desperation. Her siblings hung back, unsure of how to act around the sister who had once carried them through so much. For a moment, Aminat felt the old surge of care and loyalty that had defined her life for so long. But this time she also felt clarity. She remembered the betrayal, the house sold behind her back, the humiliation and heartbreak she had endured. Aminat listened to their story, nodding as they explained their struggles, But she did not let emotion cloud her judgment. She offered limited assistance, a small loan to cover immediate needs, guidance on managing their finances, and advice on rebuilding responsibly. She made it clear that she would help, but only on her terms. No more blind trust, no more sacrificing everything for people who might turn their backs on her. She wanted them to understand that help came with accountability, and that their past choices had consequences. As they left, Aminat watched them go with a quiet sense of resolve. She had not forgotten the pain, but she had transformed it into strength. She knew she could care for others without losing herself. Standing in her office looking out over the city she had claimed through hard work and determination, she whispered to herself, "I saved the home once, but I built a life where no betrayal can ever leave me homeless again."